Welcome to the Pro B-Ball Report Postgame Show for the Toronto Raptors at Miami Heat, where the Raptors managed to brick their way from the free throw line to a 107-102 loss in a very winnable game where Dwyane Wade played like Dwyane Wade old, and for some reason Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan couldn't seem to find the basket from the free throw line. Toronto got down early, played catch up the rest of the way, seemed to be there having a shot at the end, but just couldn't manage to pull it out. And basically let the referees get the better of them in the last 5 minutes in a game that was still winnable. I'm here with co-host James Borbath, and we'll be running down what happened in tonight's game. James, your initial impressions from the rather strangely played game at times.
Well, of course, the Raptors didn't have Amir Johnson tonight, so Patrick Patterson got the start. But ultimately, as much as I love Amir, this wasn't about Amir Johnson not being in the lineup tonight. Raptors had a number of issues. I think there's a couple things that we can take away now that we've seen 3 games. Through 3 games, their perimeter defense is awful. And their shooting the 3-point shot is awful. Again, tonight, they were, 4 of 15, not getting it done in that respect. They didn't get it done at the foul line tonight. I mean, that was the big takeaway that I think everyone will have for this game. And a lot of times, you mentioned the refs and calls and all that. The Raptors have to get it through their head. If calls aren't going their way, which happens a lot, and some people have their conspiracy theories about that, regardless of if you believe in those or not, the Raptors make it worse by letting the referees get in their heads. And you saw that with Grievous Vasquez tonight. I mean, he should have been thrown out of this game. Like, there's no question in my mind. He got a foul call he didn't like. He mouthed off at the ref. He got a technical. And then he just kept on mouthing off. James Johnson, of all people, was the voice of reason that came in to drag him away from yelling at the referee.
Yeah, and Kyle Lowry, around about that same time, did a very similar move to what Grievous had done with the same result. No sympathy from the referee. The Raptors did not get cheated by not getting to the line in this game. They got to the line 39 times. They didn't get every call. DeMar DeRozan did get hit in that fourth quarter and knocked down and did not get a call. But you're not going to get them all. DeMar got to the line lots of times in this game. He was 7 of 12 from the line. His problem wasn't not getting there. It was not hitting the ones we got when he was there.
Yeah, even if they were making it in the line more, like, they weren't making their shots anyway, right? So it wasn't really a big deal tonight. It was more a case of executing at the line than being able to get to the line. But there was that one stretch in the game. I think you had the stat for it, but Miami got on that big run, like 14-2 or something like that. And really, the Raptors, they were kind of blitzed out of this game. They were always playing from behind from then on, and they just didn't look themselves today. They really, like, all the little flaws we saw in the wins versus Atlanta and versus Orlando, I think, against a better Miami team, they were exposed because of some of the things that they've been doing wrong. And, I wasn't terribly shocked at the result today because I didn't, as I said last night when we were doing this, I didn't think the Raptors played all that particularly well in their first 2 games. The good news for the Raptors is no one's got off to a hot start. Miami's the only undefeated team left in the Eastern Conference now, so it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly a lesson to learn.
Yeah, this is a game where the coach's ammunition. This was a game where if Toronto had shot a normal percentage from the free throw line, they would have walked out from a win in spite of the fact they got out rebounded 43 to 28 and did not hustle on the boards. Dwyane Wade got 11 boards because he earned them. He outworked Toronto's bigs, Toronto's guards to get in and get rebounds. And he's on a back-to-back night as well, where he didn't have a good game the night before. Toronto just got out hustled. And if they had have won this game, which was there to be won, and if they'd hit their free throws, they would have won. And not to mention Jonas Valanciunas somehow, unimaginably, failing to dunk on 3 separate occasions where he was not contested and threw the ball over the hoop, around the hoop, past the hoop, but nowhere close to being inside the hoop without cause. He really only had a jump ball 3 inches high, and he could have dunked it. But that was, in many ways, what was going on in this game. Toronto was just that little bit off. Something was not quite right. They weren't getting to the rebound. They weren't hitting their free throws. They weren't finishing the easy play. And against Miami and against the team where Dwyane Wade is having a good night, that's not good enough.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And we talked about, like, last night heading into this game, Jonas was going to be a big key for this game because, and Jack brought up the exact point that I brought up on this postgame show at the beginning of this game. The Raptors, maybe they shouldn't match up with Miami. Maybe they should just go with their big guy in Jonas and feed it down low. And that's what they were doing early. And Jonas wasn't taking advantage of it, wasn't getting the job done at times. I mean, the one thing where you do miss Amir Johnson is I think he's a lot of that vocal leader on the floor, and he inspires a lot of the effort, I think, that you get on the glass. Even if he's not necessarily getting the rebounds, I think he inspires the rest of his team to follow his lead, and that lead wasn't out there tonight. And Patrick Patterson was terrible. I mean, let's make no bones about it. He did nothing. He ended up getting benched in this game, so he was not the answer for the Raptors, clearly.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Patrick came into the game, looked terrible, picked up 3 quick fouls, played less than 15 minutes, and didn't deserve to be back on the floor in the second half. It's not what we expect from Patrick. He's a really solid player. Most nights you get a really great effort from it. Just wasn't there tonight. I think one of the things we really see when we're watching the Raptors play is without Amir on the floor as the veteran big man, assignments get missed. And it's not so much that Amir would necessarily get 10 rebounds, which he may have in this game, but he boxes out his man. He makes it easier for other people to get rebounds by playing his position correctly. We really saw a lack of that through stretches in this game. Once again, guys who did play really well, Tyler Hansbrough came out. Major League Hustle really helped keep Toronto in this contest just by working very hard. James Johnson, for the second night in a row, was a really effective offensive player and blocked some shots and covered Dwyane Wade better than anyone else on the team could. Charged the rim, finished. And this to me is something of a surprise, having watched James play before and his first stint here in Toronto quite a bit. James, the last 2 games, has been going to the rim and finishing, as opposed to getting to the rim and somehow losing the ball one side or the other and not going up with the force, because he's a big guy, a 250-pound guy who's got plenty of strength. Last 2 games we've seen him use this at the rim and be very effective. That's not really his role, but he might not have won the game in Orlando if he hadn't have done that.
Yeah, but this second unit, the scoring isn't happening for the second unit. I mean, Lou Williams, 3 games into his Raptor career, not exactly blowing anybody away with his scoring. He's supposed to be a major contributor on that second unit scoring. Obviously, Patterson moves up into the starting unit, so you lose some scoring at the power forward position. And it kind of on and on and on. And, you know, if no one else is going to score, I mean, James Johnson is going to he's not afraid to take the opportunity, as we talked about last night. He sometimes takes it too much, and that's sometimes a problem. But when he's able to put the ball in the basket like he has been, it isn't. And he's been effectively doing that. And I think, you know, I think the other thing that I joked about it, but I think it speaks to, we've been sold on this bill of goods that James Johnson is a different guy. Pulling back Vasquez from that situation with the referee, that is a different James Johnson. He would be the guy yelling at the referee in his last Raptor stint, and he's the guy that's pulling someone else away. I think that's visible change that everyone can see.
Yeah, it's very, very positive. His first 3 games with Toronto, James Johnson looks like a guy you want to have on your team. He's going to really contribute. It's a very good sign. Vasquez, for having lost his mind there in the fourth quarter, had a much better game tonight than in Orlando, where he was 1 of 9. Today, he's basically a typical 5 of 11. That's Chris Vasquez. That's what you should expect. And 12 points. You just don't expect the 6 personal fouls and yelling at the ref and being exited out the game because he fouled out and should have fouled out much earlier. But we expect him to round back into form. I think you'll give him a day off and come back home for the game on Tuesday, and he'll be back to normal, hopefully. We expect a lot from Grievous. The team really needs him to perform if they're going to win against good teams. To me, it really stands out. We talk about Lou Williams not really having a good game. He got to the line 10 times. You've got DeMar DeRozan to the line 12 times. Kyle Lowry to the line 13 times. Between these 3 top guards in terms of scorers who are supposed to contribute to this team, they missed a total of 5, 6, and 4. 15 free throws. They were the culprits that cost the Raptors the game at the free throw line tonight. And those are not the guys you'd expect to do that. These are normally very, very reliable free throw shooters. And you have to wonder if they let the magnitude of the game, their game of the season, seems strange, but did they let the magnitude of the game get to them? Did they let the fact that this is the 16th time in a row the Raptors have lost to the Miami Heat somehow invade their psyche? James, what do you think?
Well, they certainly weren't intimidated by the large crowd in Miami. There are sections of tickets available for Miami Heat games this year. I just want to say that. So it wasn't the crowd, clearly. Chris Bosh is not exactly the most intimidating guy in the world. Dwyane Wade, a lot of talk, not a lot of action. Yeah, I do think, at some point when you haven't beaten a team and that's all you hear from the reporters, and that's not to beat down on the reporters because I think that's us doing our jobs. We have to mention these things when a team hasn't beat another team for 15 straight games. That's what we do. But when they hear that constantly from reporters and stuff like that, yeah, I think it does become an issue. And I think in general, this team has been very lackadaisical the first 3 games. And it's concerning because, it took a lot of hard work for them to overachieve like they did last year. And I don't see that hard work through the first 3 games this year. Yes, they're 2-1. Yes, they have a good record. But in order to get back to where they were, I think they're going to have to work hard, and they're going to have to play a much better brand of basketball than we've seen them play through these first 3 games. And, it's going to be interesting because a lot of their games are at home, and that makes things seem a little easier and life's a little easier. I think this team needs some adversity, and maybe losing this game wasn't the worst thing in the world for this team.
Yeah, it's to a large extent, it's really hard for a coach to go beat up on his team after a win, even when they may only, like in the Magic game, they played maybe 5 minutes at any level of intensity because that's all they felt they needed to do, and was true. That's not going to cut it against the Heat. There's even a risk it won't cut it against the Thunder. The Thunder, missing 2 stars, did win their next game. They're playing with lots of pride. They should be easy pickings if Toronto comes out and plays hard on Tuesday. But
no question.
If you don't play.
No question. And they beat them with Westbrook in the preseason, and were able to do it fairly handily. But, it's just, in Oklahoma City, you talk about certain teams and matchups not working out. For whatever reason, Oklahoma City has never really had an easy time with the Raptors. And it's not because the Raptors were in their league. They haven't been. But a lot of times the Raptors would get lucky and Durant wouldn't be in the lineup, or just certain little things would play in the Raptors' favor. So Oklahoma City hasn't always had the greatest of times playing the Toronto Raptors. So Yeah, it's a game. It's a game where again, it's not that hard for the Raptors. They're actually catching a break because once Durant's back, I think that team's a whole different animal than what they are right now. But the Raptors have been the team on the other side of that coin where they've had lots of injuries and they've come through adversity. And back in the day, they had that one time they had 7 guys and played the Wizards with Michael Jordan and won the game. I mean, it happens. Like, it is the NBA. Every team is professional, and it seems cliche. But if you don't come to work every night, sometimes you're going to get kicked in the butt for it. And the Raptors really have kind of coasted through the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, and looking at from the other team's perspective, you got Luol Deng with 18 points, Chris Bosh 21-11, D Wade with 19-11 and 7. That is their formula for success going forward. Now, they need to play a lot better. They fouled way too much in this game. If they foul like this, you can't count on the other team missing 15 free throws to come out with a win.
Yeah.
But from an offensive standpoint, they're getting their stuff together that way. So they've got some balance there. They had 5 guys in double figures. Nice balanced scoring. They have their own things to work on, but they should be pretty happy coming out with the home win. And in a game which evolved this way, you would expect the home team to somehow slide out with the victory because both teams made more than enough mistakes to not deserve it, in which case the home team is probably going to win.
Yeah, although, like I said, it wasn't through fan support, certainly, because that was clearly lacking in Miami. But it was one of those games where I think, Eric Spoelstra has been not treated the best over the last 4 years by the media and by fans, but I've always thought he was a really good coach, and I think this year he's going to all of a sudden become a lot smarter, Steve, because this Miami team will still be good, and people will wonder why, and they'll have to come up with the answer that Eric Spoelstra is a pretty good coach, and I think he is. And I think he was when he had the talent that he had. I mean, everyone just assumes, and it's the old argument that gets put against Phil Jackson all the time, too. Phil Jackson had all these incredible stars to coach, and yeah, he did, but managing all those egos is tough, too, and that's a job in and of itself. I think Eric Spoelstra is a really good coach, and I think Miami showed it in this game at times with as you mentioned, they're not the fastest team in the world, but still defensively they did a good job tonight.
Yeah, and Eric does have some talent with this roster. You really look at it and go, if they don't finish in 6th place or better, then you're going to look at the coaching and go, maybe Eric's not as good as we all thought. But if they finish in 4th, man, he's done a really good job because he lost the best player you could lose, and he held it together, and he's got a competitive club that's got a chance at getting out of the first round, and a lot of that will depend on what Eric can do to mold this group. Everyone's expecting Dwyane Wade at some point to have to take some time off and miss some games. It'd be really surprising if he played more than 60 games in a season with his history of knee problems. He's got his work cut out for him. This is a real test for the coach, and I agree with you. I think Eric Spoelstra is a quality coach, and he's not going to let this team collapse just because he may run into some injury problems.
Yeah, and Deng is the guy too who, if we're betting people, I don't know if we're betting the farm that he'll stay healthy the whole year. I mean, I'm sure we could go track down former Raptors announcer Chuck Swirsky, and he could confirm that Luol Deng, maybe not the most durable guy in the world in his time with the Chicago Bulls, although Chuck might not be willing to say that. He's a good guy. He stands up for his Bulls now. But I'll say it, Deng hasn't been the most durable guy in the world. And, as crazy as it sounds, Chris Bosh is in a warmer climate playing for the Toronto Raptors that he left, if you get what I'm saying. It's the same kind of a team that he left in Toronto where he's going to be the focus night in, night out for most nights. Even though Wade's out there, I think he's going to be a huge key to how successful or how unsuccessful this Heat team ultimately is.
Well, he has to be. If he's not, this team is going to fail miserably because you can't put that burden on Wade at this point in his career with his history of knee problems. Luol Deng showed last year in Cleveland, you can't look to him as a savior. He's a complementary piece who makes your team better. He's not the guy who carries your team.
Yeah, and he didn't help Cleveland any when he went there as kind of a savior for them either. He was not a guy who got them to the next level certainly. And well, Cleveland had another plan that seemed to work out well. They got this guy named LeBron back, and that was good. The only other thing I can't end this show without mentioning, Josh McRoberts going all Hulk Hogan on his jersey. I mean, that was impressive. The Hulkster used to gimmick those things. He didn't actually rip them. Josh McRoberts, no gimmick Miami Heat jersey. He just ripped the thing in half, and I'm like, wow, that guy's serious, man. Like, I know they call Tyler Hansbrough Psycho T, but Josh McRoberts, he's ripping off T-shirts.
Yeah, for a guy who played less than 8 minutes and scored 2 points, he kind of stood out there. He was hard to not notice he was in this game. I can't say I've seen someone rip their jersey in half on the court before. That's pretty good.
Absolutely not. I just want to know, does that come out of his paycheck, or is that like, okay? Because like clearly that's just wasteful in these times where we try and recycle everything. That's just wasteful. Although if he signs that and puts that on eBay, I'm sure he can make back the money he would lose. Clearly, because I think a lot of people would be interested in a ripped, game-worn jersey of the Miami Heat. You don't see those on eBay every day, Steve.
I think that jersey will sell if anyone can get a hold of it. Well, Toronto gets to get back at it fairly quickly. They get a day off to travel and practice, and right back at the grind for a long 7-game homestand starting on Tuesday. The Raptors better make hay when making hay is good, because this is an opportunity most teams don't see this early in the season. I guess the good news from tonight, for all the things they did wrong, for all the struggles they had from the free throw line, DeMar DeRozan still had 30 points. Kyle Lowry still had 22 points. If things had gone a little better, they would have come out with a win. I think we have to look at the glass half full here, and Casey now is something to tear a strip off these guys because they need a good butt kicking. They are not playing up to their potential. We expect a lot from this team. They had a very good run last year. They can't coast this season through on those laurels. Those laurels don't count for anything now. This should be a nice stand. They got a couple of weeks with a lot of winnable games, and it should be a lot of fun to be down at the ACC, especially over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's where you will be. I will be not there, so we won't see each other in this fashion for a while because we're doing all the road games. So no road games, that means no me. So I guess I'll hang out, watch some wrestling, watch some Raptors, and maybe I can find that Josh McRoberts T-shirt and I'll wear it on the show. The ripped T-shirt, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, the early homestand, it's going to be something for the Raptors because their schedule used to be pretty standard fare. The Raptors would play almost a similar schedule every year, and this year's schedule is totally different in the sense they play a lot of home games early on, and really a great opportunity for this team to get in front of things. It always used to be February used to be that month where the Raptors could make some hay and kind of secure themselves for the playoffs and that. This year it's really early on where they get that opportunity to distance themselves from the rest of the pack, and we'll see if they're able to do it. They're not off to the greatest of starts in that, though, even though they are 2-1. But if the crowd's anything like it was for opening night, that will be a great help to these Raptors because the crowd was fantastic on opening night.
Yeah, I'm expecting a really fun crowd, at least for the first game back. It's really interesting to see if people still come out for Jurassic Park as the season moves along. But it looks like a fun time. May not be as much fun when it's -10 outside, but it's still fall. It's not that bad yet.
Hey, with the price of those tickets inside the building, outside the building isn't a bad place to be. Because if memory serves me, that's still free to be out there. So it's not all that bad. It's like, what is it now? Like $60 to sit up in the upper deck? That's not cheap. It's not a cheap night out at, like it's not a cheap date night anymore. Let alone if you're taking the family and kids. My gosh, take out a loan.
And if you want to buy that Josh McRoberts jersey, you may need a loan to buy that, because if that thing hits eBay, that's going to go for some serious bucks.
I'm just going to rip my own, Steve. I was going to play it off and say I bought it, but I'm just going to rip my own, and we'll next time we play the Heat, whenever that is, maybe I'll have it. I don't know. I'm probably making all that up. I'm just having fun. It's a Sunday night. You got to have some fun.
And actually, in a lot of ways, this game was fun. It would have been more fun if Toronto would have hit their free throws. But this is Steve Brotherston, editor of Pro B-Ball Report, with James Borbath, and we'll be back at the next away game that Toronto plays. It isn't going to be for a while. And you can catch our broadcasts again in a couple of weeks.